Mahomes at bay.
The Tampa Bay Bucs, Super Bowl 55.
Hello and welcome to the Bucs Banter Podcast. This is our 59th episode. Scott is here. I am here, unsurprisingly. And we are very excited to be joined by a favorite friend of the show. We got JC Allen of Pewter Report. Anyone who knows the Bucs knows JC, and they know he is dialed in. He's been at training camp this week, so we are going to be picking his brain for as long as he will be kind enough to lend his time. How is everyone? How's everyone? Good?
Doing great.
Awesome.
Doing well, man. Good to be back, and good to have you on, JC. I've had your alerts on for your Ask Me Anythings. Has it been 11 o'clock? I'm seeing it pop up on my Twitter feed, maybe noon every day. It's been awesome.
It's been all over the place. Literally, whenever I'm headed into camp and when the camp is over, I try to put them up. Camp is over now, so I don't know how frequent I'll still be able to get them up and you know what it will look like, but I do drive into work every day, so maybe I'll start doing like a morning commute AMA. So, you know, we'll get those going. And it's been great just to kind of give, you know, fans a platform to speak. And I know when we do these podcasts, it's hard to get to everyone's question and everyone has something to say and has a concern or a comment on something. So to be able to give these, you know, the fans that platform and that voice and giving them information that, you know, training camp's over, so if you're not in the stands or you're not media watching it, you don't know what's going on, and it's been a lot of fun. So a lot of good participation on there, and I'll keep doing them for sure. People keep coming in, I'll keep doing them.
Yeah, they're great.
You've cornered that Bucs Twitter Spaces very well, JC. It's a great way, like you said, for fans to be engaged. I enjoy listening and tuning in every time. I know our guy Josh Quapo also enjoys it, I'm sure. He's saying keep your shirt on. I don't know if that's a Pewter Report insider or what, but
it's I was on the loose cannons, and you know how that goes.
Oh, so, yes, that's all you got to say.
We get it.
It was in the summer. It was downtime. Things got crazy, and we all ended up with our shirt off somehow. I don't know what happened. I don't.
Amazing. I'll have to go back and check that one out.
Sure. Please don't. Do yourself a favor.
And unlike Quapo, it's really easy when I type in your name to not misspell it. JC Allen, what a clean name you got, buddy. We like that too.
Right. You know, I could have went with Josh Allen, stuck with that, but I don't want to confuse people. You know, a lot of people confuse me with the Jacksonville defensive end. So, you know, I was a quarterback for the Bills. So
you don't want to, like you have a bigger arm than the Bills, Josh Allen, anyway, right? So you don't want to be downgraded as like, you know, the lesser armed Josh Allen, because we know that's just not the case. So
right. I mean, if I remember in Buffalo and I need to make reservations somewhere, I'm sure it'll come in handy. You know,
I feel like he does okay. I feel like
Josh Allen too. Oh, Josh Allen was coming.
Yeah.
Kind of like the Josh Allen of Twitter Spaces.
Seriously.
Did you guys see? Obviously, you guys both saw it, but how about Aaron Donald swinging that helmet around during that ball?
I mean, what? No punishment obviously laid down yet, but hey, that was insane. How about putting the two teams that played in the Super Bowl a few months ago in a practice together? What could go wrong? It's so shocking that that is a little bit shocking that Aaron Donald, you know, assaulted someone with a helmet, but still the fact that tempers flared up, who could have seen that coming?
Not just one helmet, two helmets.
Two helmets. Yeah, you're right.
You look at what Myles Garrett got after he did one helmet, and of course it was a regular season game of Myles. He got 6 games, so I mean, I think Aaron Donald should at least get 9 games. That 9th game of the season, you know, for sure.
Yeah, obviously, that's. I think that's what they're thinking too. Everyone in the Tampa area.
Yeah.
But seriously though, absolutely, like that's wild. And I mean, it's wild for anyone to do it, but it was Aaron Donald. You know what I mean? Like it was Aaron Donald.
If anyone doesn't need to do it, it's him too.
Yeah, I know. He just like picks people up and moves them. It's so weird to see. Yeah, that was
just out there.
Yeah, seriously.
It was
the Hulk.
Each knuckle on his fist is like a helmet. Like what?
Guy trains with knives in the off season. Literally trains with knives. I've seen the videos. It's crazy.
Yeah.
He's an insane animal of a person. You don't want to make him mad. I don't know.
Now the Bengals know. Apparently, just truly bizarre way to open up Twitter and see that. And it also, like JC mentioned, saw a couple of the the replays of the Myles Garrett one from a few years ago. It was Mason Rudolph, right? Was quarterbacking the Steelers. That was wild. I mean, that was absolutely nuts too. And just, I feel like one crazy thing happens, and then it kind of pushes up the previous craziest thing that's out of the narrative. And we obviously haven't talked about the Myles Garrett helmet swing in a while, but revisiting that, man, and I'm almost positive it was a Thursday night game, so prime time, and just good Lord, that was nuts too.
Yeah, it was. I mean, you never expect to see something like that on the football field.
But it's worth mentioning, the precedent that was set with that suspension, JC, in all seriousness. I guess the difference they don't want to suspend. I mean, I'm sure they didn't want to suspend Myles Garrett. They had to. The same goes for Aaron Donald, if not more so. But I assume they will identify the difference between the two incidents being Rudolph wasn't wearing a helmet when he was getting helmet swung at his face. And they're going to say, this guy had a helmet on or something. That's my
And at the camp, too. They're not going to do anything. There's nothing to come of it. No fines, no suspensions or anything like that. It's just going to be swept under the rug.
But we'll see if the team's got to impose something out of, if they want to, preserve their reputation. So they'll just say it's a fine in-house or something like that.
And then not really.
Yeah.
Before we get going, so for anyone, you can see it on the screen. Make sure you follow JC at JC Allen NFL. He's doing great work for Pewter Report, as so many of our friends are. Mentioned Josh Quapo. He's in the comments. JC is making appearances. We already talked about his Twitter spaces. He's all over Bucs Twitter and making appearances on podcasts. He's putting out great info, breaking news this year all the time. With first-hand accounts from camp. So a valuable guy to have on our Rolodex. Let's just say that one of our OG guests. And we crossed paths at Bucs Report right before you joined Pewter Report. So back when we were getting started with this. So it's so great to have you back on, JC. Just wanted to say
I appreciate being on here. I'm always trying to hit myself out and give any sort of insight I can to any other media outlet that's looking for it. I'll be on WDAE during the season too, which is going to be a lot of fun. Doing some morning radio, afternoon radio hits, so that'd be fun. But I love this. We talked about it before we went live. I'll chop up football with anybody anytime. I don't care. If you've got 10 followers, 25,000 followers, I don't care. I'm just always in football mode and ready to talk football, especially this Bucs team, because I know them so well now. So any opportunity I get, I'm all about it.
And it might be
radio recently too. It's like, Arizona, how the hell did they even get in touch with me? Hey, it happened.
And it might be the last year to do it. I know you're a Boston guy, and with Tom Brady anyway, to cover him in the NFL this year. So I mean, we missed our pod last week, so we've been off the air for 2 weeks. Brady is back, as everyone knows, from his excused absence. And it was kind of announced today without officially saying it that it sounds like he's going to start against the Colts on Saturday night. I want to know, JC, if you have anything you care to offer in relation to that excused absence. I don't know. It's been talked about. It is what it is. But also just more specifically, how did Brady look coming back this week? What were the vibes you were getting being at camp? Was it like nothing ever, like he never left? Or is there anything to report on or even just speculate on from your vantage point as it relates to Brady being reintroduced as the leader of this team?
As far as where he was, you pick a theory and run with it. Masked Singer, he was on vacation in the Bahamas. His mother was not doing well. I mean, everything and anything in between. Aaron Wilson came out saying that he was in vacation in the Bahamas, and Dove Kleiman kind of rolled with that. So we're never going to find out. Even when we get to talk to Tom on Saturday, he's going to be asked the question, what were you doing? What was that was a personal thing. And it's in the past. And right now we're just going to get ready and prepare for Dallas. And, we're on to Cincinnati. That's the answer he's going to give when asked that question. But as far as practice, he looked great. I mean, did Tom leave? I don't know. I mean, you could never tell. He's still slinging bullets, to the guys and the cadence, and has command of the huddle and command of of the offense, and there looked to be no drop off at all. I mean, I said it multiple times on the Twitter Spaces. If you think Brady was out there eating pizza, burgers, bonbons, and ice cream, and not, training still getting some training in, you didn't bring a football with him at all to throw the football for, maybe an hour a day or so, or whatever, like, you're crazy. This guy is a machine. Just because he took time off from this facility doesn't mean he took time off of his training and his regimen. He was still doing that stuff. So he's looked good. I haven't seen any drop off. Coach Bull said it today, between the two games, he wasn't going to play in anyways. And the practices that he missed, he was going to have, he maybe missed 5 practices, 6 practices. 3 of those days were going to be scheduled off days. So he missed three practices total. And everyone's kind of freaking out. And then obviously he missed yesterday's practice, and everyone's like, he's a veteran off day. He just had 11 days off. What are you doing? But I really think that was more of an onus for him to be able to get, for Bulls to be able to get Trask some extra reps, right? Trask is probably going to play that entire second half of that game. Never played in an indoor stadium, never played on turf, at least at the NFL level. You get him that experience on the turf, get them those extra reps. And again, you're not trying to, if Tom's going on Saturday, you don't want to overwork his arm Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. You give him the day off, and let him get back into the swing of things on Friday, which he was Thursday, which he was out there, and then back to normal situation. Just, you got to keep him fresh. It's Tom Brady. He's 45 years old. Not a 25-year-old guy. You say run it every day, and you're going to do 60 snaps in practice or whatever. So
he's anything but normal, and having him as your 45-year-old quarterback is anything but normal. So, like, of course, things are going to go a little bit different. This is the first time there's been any preferential treatment. But I couldn't believe how many people online in the Bucs fan community were actually getting worked up about it and acting like it was some issue. I'm like, would you rather not have Tom Brady or have Tom Brady and deal with a brief absence during training camp? Like, this isn't even something you should be worried about right now. That was just sort of my general take on it.
The best thing was he's not coming back. He's retiring. His offensive line, he's not going to come back. I was like, Aaron Stinney went down and like, oh, he's not coming back. They lost Aaron Stinney. So I don't. That was the craziest one in my opinion. And you have the naysayers like, he's not committed. How dare he? Who does he think he is? Tom Brady runs the team. It was just, there were some crazy things and crazy rumors flying out from everywhere, including that Masked Singer one. But at the end of the day, it's Tom Brady. He's 45, year 23. If he wants to take 11 days off, the coaches okayed it. It was discussed before training camp started. He made an emphasis, as Bull said, to be there the first 2 weeks to make sure he was, getting those valuable reps in with his teammates. Who cares? Yeah. For me, it was never a big deal. I would just kind of laughed and shrugged it off and brought it up when people brought it up. But it's like, it's not a big deal. It really is not a big deal. If it was Albert Hainsworth after getting that giant contract, taking 11 days off and then coming back, like, maybe, but it's Tom freaking Brady. Let's get real, guys.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Scotty's back. I'm sure anyone who's just listening and not watching wouldn't have even noticed.
Yeah. I'm sorry. I couldn't believe that it was even a story. Like, I know we're kind of getting into the dregs of camp and everything like that. But it's literally maybe the person who's earned the most credibility and the guy who could least be criticized for this in NFL history is Tom Brady. And like JC said, he took 2 weeks off in the middle of August and just sat around. Like, come on, what are we talking about? Who knows what he was doing? Honestly, doesn't matter. And JC lined out that it was only a handful, actually like 3 practices. Like, come on, people. This is really when we just need the games to start, right? Like, this is when we need to get into it, because come on, let's go here.
For sure.
It's gonna get worse this next couple weeks until it starts. Everyone's gonna be analyzing the roster and breaking it down, and it's not gonna.
Yeah, I know.
A lot of fan stuff going on.
I know. A lot of fantasy talk coming up here too. So,
any predictions? I mean, I know. So I wasn't aware, but look, since 2009, Greg Auman reported that Tom Brady has always started and played the final preseason game. because the one thing I was just thinking if it were me, which it clearly isn't, I would have liked him to get some reps in that second preseason game and then have time off. But the way Brady likes to do it is get into that final preseason game. Like I said, he's been doing it since 2009. Do you have any predictions or any intel at all, JC or Scott, in terms of how many drives you think we're going to see from Tom under center on Saturday versus the Colts in Indianapolis?
Yeah, I think you go back to it before last year when they had 4 preseason games. That third preseason game was always the one where you played your starters and then you played the rest of the guys the next week. Maybe sprinkle a few more starters in there, guys competing. So this third preseason game without the fourth one, you kind of do the same thing here. And those joint practices are huge as well to, evaluate players. And I think we're going to start to see teams do more of that. I wouldn't be surprised to see, teams do 3 weeks of joint practices, if they can work it out via the schedule and then have the games, because they're just so valuable. Obviously you have things like, today's fight happened and there was a fight. There's been quite a few fights in practice.
Every year, always, without hesitation, there's something that goes on in one of those joint practices, it seems like.
But I think 2 series minimum, maybe the whole first half.
Yeah, sorry, I would have guessed the first half, just based on him wanting to get as many reps as possible. But I mean, obviously, JC would know more than me. But yeah,
no. I mean, this is just a guesstimation point right now. He goes out in those first 2 series, leads them for touchdowns, 75 play drives after kickbacks or whatever.
Yeah,
you've seen enough of Brady. You don't need to see him out there for a third series.
That's true.
One of those, and I think it's more about the offensive line. What Brady and Evans can do. Maybe you get some concentrated looks at Brady and Julio out there and try to get those looks out there, or maybe Brady and Rudolph and call those plays. But it's mostly about seeing that offensive line work with Brady and everything like that. Seeing that how Hainsey, Shaq, and Gedeke are going to be in that mix. And this is just because Gedeke was listed as a starter on the unofficial depth chart, he's getting the start. This competition is not completely over yet. He needs to have a good showing out there because he still is a rookie, and he's talked about it even up to this week. Talking to him, it's still a change. It's still a transition from the left side to the right side, from tackle to guard, from Mac to NFL. The speed, he feels like pretty much. He said. Asked him, "Are you comfortable with the position?" And verbatim, I'll tell you what he said. Yeah, I feel like it's definitely coming along. Obviously, with position change, there's going to be some roadblocks in the way, but you have to just get over those. I'm only going to get better and better with more repetition. So that's the reason why he's out there. Get him the repetition. That's the reason why you have him at left guard, at that starting left guard. But if they feel like they're going to be, it's a situation with Alex Kappa where Caleb Benioff started that season, and then Alex Kappa came in, midway and took over that role. If they feel like Nick Leverett is going to give them the best opportunity to start the season, especially against some really good teams, and then maybe you start to work Gedeke in there. Maybe that's what they do. Maybe they also live and die by the rookie as well. Tom Brady's done more with way lesser linemen than what Gedeke is, even making the change. So I think you got to see Tom for a few series, and you got to see how he does behind that line. And then I think you work in some concentrated efforts to get the ball to Julio, get the ball to Rudolph, and then just kind of play the game. I don't think it's more of we got to win this game, make sure, and Tom's still going to be competitive, and he's going to look for the open guy and pass it. But I think on some of these plays, we'll see first reads be Julio and first reads be Rudolph.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense.
Great point in terms of because I was thinking if we're predicting, I was thinking it might be more like it'll depend more on how many drives he gets. And I was thinking he might end after the first quarter. But what you're saying is so true in terms of the importance of his communication and being on the same page with this young interior offensive line. And JC, I'm glad you brought that up because that's huge. Quapo in the comments on YouTube, he's watching us, says Gedeke going to be a starter. Pardon me, book it. It does feel like my impression is it's his job to lose at this point. And you're right, though. It's still a competition. That's just kind of the vibe I get since they've inserted him there. If he can come away without any holding penalties, because he played well. He was standing guys up and holding his own. It was just a couple mental errors. So work those kinks out. But it seems to be he's holding his own enough that I feel like it's his job to lose. I don't know.
No, I agree.
Yeah.
No, I agree too. I think it's if he goes out there and he has a great game, it's pretty much going to be his job, show that you can get rid of those mental mistakes, those, penalties. Sacks will happen sometimes. It's just nature of the beast. I'm interested to see if DeForest Buckner is going to play, because I think that would be a really big test for him, going up against a guy like him. So I just think that I think you know what you have in Nick Leverett. I think he brings a lot of versatility to the offensive line. So ideally, he'd be that guy who would be the ideal backup lineman, top reserve lineman all along the interior. But if Gedeke really struggles, then you might have to go with him. But I agree with Josh, and I agree for the most part that Gedeke's a guy. And even talking to Coach Joe Gilbert, I asked him about the competition, and he pretty much just singled out Gedeke. He said at this point, still hasn't been a decision to be made on which way, but Gedeke has been taking more reps with the ones for sure, and he's progressed pretty good through camp. So I think they like what they've seen out of him, and it's his job to lose.
Fair.
Sorry, can I, JC, can you get a general vibe on just the overall view of the offensive line? I know obviously this is totally revamped based on what they would have expected going into the season, even, a month ago or 6 weeks ago. And obviously I know there's coach speak, and, we're next man up and all that shit that goes on
Right.
at camp. But can you read any tea leaves? Is there anything that you kind of see with what they're feeling and what they're expecting from this group?
I don't talking to the coaches. They don't expect a drop off. Your number's called, and Byron said it in his press conference yesterday. I trust any guy I put on that field. I trust him. And
Fair.
You need to be ready, and you need to be ready to go. Now, talking heads in the media are going to say, you got Dan Orlovsky talking about Brady and the offensive line. Will he be able to get the ball out? And the most passes the last 2 years of 20+ yards down the field. They failed to mention that he also had the second fastest release rate out of any quarterback last year. The first was Ben Roethlisberger, who was just dumping screens off. So for Brady to have 20+ yard throws and still have the fastest release, he's going to make it good. But the offensive line, it really comes down to two positions, right? I don't think Shaq Mason. I talked to Joe Gilbert at the Arians Family Foundation golf tournament, and from there, and he's said it to me multiple times at camp. Shaq's fine. Shaq's an upgrade over Alex Kappa. Maybe you look at all the PFF rankings and everything like that, and Shaq's more of a run mauler than a true pass protector, but he's been a pass protector for Tom Brady for almost his entire career, few years. So he knows Brady's tendencies, he knows his cadence, he knows his nuance. At this point, it's just getting the communication down with Tristan. And talking to Tristan, they've been talking a lot off field, a lot, together on the field, and that communication between them is going to be solid. And same thing with Hainsey, talking to him. Hainsey, even Donovan Smith, Hainsey's been saying the communication's great. They both know what they're talking about. They're helping us on the line. They're making the right calls. Talking to Hainsey, he's like, having Tom there, because Tom makes all the calls anyways. And then Hainsey, it's not like Hainsey's got to correct Tom for the most part. But then he goes,
good luck with that.
Right. Yeah. And after the play, he was asking Tom, what did you see here? So he can see it faster next time. So the real question mark comes at center and comes at left guard. Donovan Smith's going to be fine. I know people are worried. Oh, he doesn't have L.A. Marpet next to him. Donovan Smith was the top 6 left tackle in the league per PFF's grading. He was very underratedly very good. Only one sack allowed last year. And of course the playoffs were a different animal, but I think when you're looking at this line as a whole, top 10 unit still, maybe not top 5, maybe not top 3, but I don't see a huge drop off with Tom Brady's ability to make offensive linemen look good. I mean, I can go down the list with you. Stephen Neal, former wrestler that was a guard, Ted Karras, Dan Colony, Ryan Wendell, all these different guys who he's played with who were, undrafted, 4th round, 5th round, 6th round, 7th round guys that he's been
as rookies too.
As rookies, young.
Yeah. So offensive line's going to be fine, I think. I think they're going to be specifically, which works in the Bucs' favor. They want to run the ball more, and the guys you have are, still Gedeke's a better run blocker than a pass blocker at this point. Same thing with Hainsey. Same thing with Shaq Mason. So your interior guys are going to be able to move the ball, move the pile. And we've seen that for the first, couple of preseason games. And now we'll get to see it with the starters, opening up lanes and stuff like that. So
God,
I'm not worried about
that. I'm excited to see some of those number ones in game action. Like covering a lot of football so far this summer without seeing any of that. I just want to, since we're talking offensive line, I want to stick there for one moment and talk specifically about Tristan Wirfs and this mysterious oblique strain. JC, what are you seeing? What are you thinking? What are you hearing on the ground here in terms of this injury? Is he at risk of missing week 1 against the Cowboys, you think?
I don't think so. So the normal time frame for an oblique strain is 3 to 6 weeks for me and you. We're talking about an NFL lineman who's getting the best sports medicine, sports science there is out there.
Right.
He's Bull said he's on Wednesday. Bull said he's on track to be, or rather Tuesday, that he's on track to go week 1. So take that for what it is. I think he'll be out there week 1. Very least he misses week 2. But that comes back to week 2, but I don't think he misses any more than that. I truly think he'll be ready to go week 1. I don't anticipate him not being out there. But it is something to monitor because sometimes these things can come back up. You move the wrong way. If it's not completely healed and not ready to go, you don't want to rush him and have it be a lingering thing all season that inhibits his play. So, but as of right now, I think week 1, Wirfs is ready to go as the starting right tackle.
That's for sure. Now, Ryan Jensen, for anyone who wasn't aware, I gotta compliment you, man, for some of the most hard-hitting investigative journalism I've ever heard. Listening to one of your Twitter spaces, your training camp AMAs, when you were breaking down, watching Ryan Jensen walk around the sidelines. I think you said you watched him go in the parking lot to his car or something. I can't remember exactly what you said. It was hard to say. Okay, that was amazing. I loved it because you were giving us the play-by-play of what you observed. This has been mysterious. Aaron Stinney tears his ACL. We hear about it the next day, reported. I mean, we're going on what are we, 3 weeks at least now? Since a month? Why aren't we hearing anything, JC? I mean, I have to think that's at least not the worst news that we're not hearing anything, but it's also getting a bit strange at this point. I don't know if you care to offer your own insight, anything you've heard, the usual. Take it away.
Right. So there's a lot going around right now between, kind of what it is. I know some people put out he'll be out there week 5. The biggest thing to know, the biggest takeaway to know, that the Bucs aren't putting him in IR before the season starts. They will wait. They will cut somebody extra, maybe a wink nod deal with a guy like Josh Wells, who's on a veteran deal. Cut him. He's a veteran, so he doesn't have to go through waivers. Place Ryan Jensen on IR, and then after they do that, re-sign Josh Wells, something like that. That way, it will allow him to come back in as little as 4 games, which I don't think is the case, but at least come back at some point this season. It was a golf cart that you were talking about. So Jensen came out to practice on a golf cart the first day, and then was seen standing around too, for a brief amount of time. Big brace on his knee, but no crutches. And then on the second day of joint practice with the Dolphins, he was out there standing for excess of 30 minutes, walking around, shooting the breeze with guys, no crutches. Big ass knee brace on, but no crutches. And then you fast forward to Saturday, the Dolphins game. He comes walking out of the tunnel, no crutches. I tore my MCL. I'm not a football player. I'm not a tough SOB like Ryan Jensen. I was laid up on crutches for weeks. I can't. The fact that he was putting pressure on at one point in joint practices on day 2, some of the guys were throwing the ball back and forth, and they threw it in front of Jensen's path to walk, and he had to stop on a dime, and he put all of his pressure on his left knee. And you didn't make a move, didn't wink, didn't blink, didn't wince. If you're being able to put pressure on, now there's a noticeable limp and everything like that. That tells me it's not a torn ACL or completely torn. Maybe slightly torn, maybe strained grade 2 type tear or something like that. But obviously we don't know. I know he was back up. He'll be in Indy if he's not already this week, but he'll be in Indy this week for a second evaluation on the knee. They want to make sure the swelling has gone completely down so they get the best picture, the best images possible. But you're right. If it was a torn ACL, we know. Look at Tyron Smith, the Cowboys left tackle. He got tore his hamstring. And that was brutal. Last night he was walking out of the stadium, and then this morning we find out that he's going to needs to have surgery, and he's going to miss, if he comes back at all, it won't be till December.
Till December, yeah.
I think that's a similar time frame for Jensen. Don't expect to see him anytime back before the Germany game, and even right after the Germany game is pushing it. If he comes back, it's probably going to be, late to mid-December. That Bengals game, maybe that Cardinals game, a couple game reps in against the Panthers and the Falcons, and then make that playoff push. But again, it's going to he's willing himself back to health. Yeah, it's going to be something to monitor, and until we get a real diagnosis, I'm not reporting it. I haven't reported it yet because I can't lock it down. But from what it sounds like, he might not need surgery. It might be something that has to heal on its own, which is why, again, he hasn't gone under the knife and they haven't ended the season, because if it is something that can heal on its own, you don't want to, rush that surgery or whatever. So we'll see. I'm sure we'll get a report here soon. It's been long enough. He's gone through multiple evaluations. At some point, they got to tell us what's going on. To an extent, they could still not tell us everything, but to an extent, they're going to tell us hey, he's going to miss until December. He might be back into December, which kind of lines up with that time frame that Todd Bowles initially said the day after, 2 days after it happened, which that late November, December time frame. So, I mean, who knows at this point, really?
Yeah,
I'll tell you who knows. Dr. J.C. Allen on Dr. J.C. Allen NFL.
He's talking about, Colin, JC's telling us about what weight or where the weight is when he's stopping on a dime when an errant ball comes in. This is a Zapruder type shit that Bucs sickos are absolutely loving on August 25th. I mean, not the injury portion, but the reporting, the info. You kidding me? That's unbelievable.
Yeah.
It's a good sign. So.
I love it. I love that. That's so detailed. I want to shift gears and talk about the receivers because, I mean, there's so many storylines in this wide receiver room alone that I'd like. Let's just start with the big boys. Mike returned to practice this week. How did he look? Still no Russell Gage, right? Any updates there? And then Godwin, I know he was doing 11 on 11s earlier in the week. How does he look? If you could just kind of comment on those three guys as you wish, I'd love to hear what you got as it relates to those big boys.
Yeah, Gage is a wait and see. You don't want to rush it back. It's a hammy. You don't want to bother that. You saw how long it took Mike Evans. I would expect Gage to be back sometime next week. If you look at the time frame where Mike Evans tweaked his hamstring, and I don't know if it is the same type of injury or whatnot. If it's more, severe or if it's kind of along the same lines. But if you're going by the Mike Evans time frame, it would be next week because it happened about a week after Mike Evans did. So it would be sometime next week. So I could see that happening. As far as Mike Evans, was he hurt? I don't know. He looks like Mike Evans out there. His speed is there. He's making, his route running's there. His catching ability's there. Who would have thought he had a hamstring tweak? Not me. Just from observations.
Brady should have just tweaked his hamstring, and this wouldn't have been an issue.
Right.
No kidding.
Just had a tweaked hamstring. And as far as Godwin, super encouraging. Super encouraging. He was wearing that started practice this week on Monday, wearing the black no contact, getting a little bit on 11-11s, but they were practicing on the third field, and we didn't have a good vantage point. They didn't practice the next 2 days indoors. He had an off day today, but the next 2 days were indoors wearing that orange creamsicle non-contact jersey. The first day, he
so sick, by the way, the jersey.
Right.
Sorry. Yeah.
The first day he was out on some routes and he simulated. It was a run play, and he simulated pass blocking, kind of getting out there. And they're not hitting or real live tackling or blocking or anything like that, but he was simulating that blocking, getting his hands on somebody, and then he ran a design screen throw where he had to run through a couple people and make some contact, trying to sneak through the tacklers because they just kind of tag you, wrap you up a little bit. And then on the next day, on Wednesday, he was out there catching balls like you wouldn't believe, a one-handed grab on the sideline in front of Nolan Turner, turn it around him and got for the score. Touchdown on a crosser in the back of the end zone. A deep touchdown from Kyle Trask with Kyler McMichael in coverage. Like he looks like Chris Godwin. Like again, they're
so
taking
good,
it
man.
slow. No contact obviously is happening really. They're taking it slow, but as far as what I've seen from Godwin, I would not be shocked if he's ready to go by week 1. He won't play on Saturday for sure, but I would not be shocked to see if he's ready to go by week 1. And if not, the very least week 2, week 3. The fact that they didn't put him on PUP, which means he would have missed the first 6 weeks. The fact that he's out there practicing doesn't appear like he's going to go on injured reserve, which means he'd miss the first 4 weeks. So you cross those 2 timetables out. I mean, week 3, the latest, Godwin will be back. The latest, and I think it's probably week 1 that he's back.
Love that,
Collin. How good is that? How good is that to hear?
So great. And I think it was actually JC who made an interesting point about, and correct me if I'm wrong if it wasn't you, JC, about how Godwin's injury being a contact injury could actually, in a twisted way, be beneficial in terms of the whole mental hurdle you're facing when you come back from a torn ACL. Because when it's a non-contact injury, you're then subconsciously fearful of every cut of your fear. You're scared of the grass, right? He doesn't have that. Was that you who said that? Because I thought that was a very astute observation.
It's gonna be. Yeah, I was talking about that on the Twitter space. It'll be interesting when he gets contact, though, right? Like this, and I don't think he's going to shy away from it at all or anything like that. But yeah, you see a lot of these guys sometimes they'll play hesitant and not scared, but hesitant because you're just running a normal route. You cut the wrong way, and all of a sudden, freak ACL injury, freak ACL, MCL, and you're done. You have this long road of rehab, and then when you get back out there, it's like, okay, I cut this way. How did that happen? You look at the tape and you're like, how did that happen? And then it's subconsciously in the back of your mind. Whereas if it's football, you're going to get hit. Like there's no way around it. You got the ball in your hands. You're getting tackled. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, it's coming if you catch the ball and while you could be, have some trepidation about getting hit certain ways or whatever because of that injury and because of the way it happened, you're not going to have trepidation every time the ball snapped and you have to run your route, So I think it does kind of ease your mind a little bit and again, I'm not speaking from experience. I'm not an athlete of any sort of shape, size. But I think that's something with the mental aspect of it.
Come on, you've an elite voice box, bro. Don't sell yourself short.
That's true. That's true.
Great lungs on the kid. Kristen Blankenship on YouTube says Jensen is using Brady's witch doctor. I don't know if she's referring to Dr. JC Allen or Alex Guerrero, but either way, I hope Jensen's using them. Hope Jensen's using the doc.
I took the words out of my mouth, Call. Yeah, please. Let's get as many witch doctors in here as possible to get Jensen on the field. I don't care what needs to happen here. Some sort of witch's brew, whatever they do.
We're not voodoo doctor, right? We don't need any of those Nolans voodoo, witch doctor.
Take him down to the bayou and just figure it out. Yeah.
Now,
I wouldn't be surprised if he jumps on pliability. It is ligaments. It's not, ligaments and muscles. Yeah. It doesn't seem like it's a break. So, elongate those and do what you can to, once you can start rehabbing. I would not be surprised to find out that Guerrero's working on Jensen.
Yeah.
Now, sticking with the wide receivers, JC, you and I touched on this on your Twitter space this week. And
a great article about it.
Oh, thank you. But yeah, so in terms of the final wide receiver spots, you and I kind of debated it briefly as I was in the middle of working on that piece. So Cyril Grayson's out of the picture now. I mean, that not super surprising. And I expect Rashad Perriman to see a similar fate personally. Cyril Grayson has impressed me more than Rashad Perriman. They've both been hurt. So I have trouble envisioning a scenario where they keep him. And I know so the question becomes are they going to keep 7? Are they going to keep 6? Right. Mm-hmm. I think, are we in agreement here that it just feels like there's too much talent there to not keep 7 and with the injuries they've dealt with previously? What are your thoughts? Like, am I overreaching here?
I was team 7. I've been team 7. I'm on the fence now. I really am on the fence about team 7 and team 6.
Shit.
It really depends on what they want to keep. You can't look at these guys as wide receivers, right? They're not going to see the field unless there's an injury. Like, you're not going to have Jalen Darden out there as a regular guy. Maybe you have some plays for him. You're not going to see Scotty Miller out there and be like, oh, we need a deep threat, throw Scotty out there. Evans and Godwin and Gage and Julio are going to do just fine in that capacity. It's going to be hard enough to see get Tyler Johnson on the field for snaps, let alone a 7th guy in a DeAndre Hopkins or a guy like Scotty Miller or Brashad Perriman. Like, these guys most likely aren't going to see the field. Now, maybe that 6th guy might see it a little bit more if they're trying to keep Julio Jones fresh. If they're trying to ease Godwin back in, you're trying to do those 2 things in the early of the season. So, maybe, you get more snaps for Johnson. You get more snaps for that 6th guy, whether it's Darden or Miller or Tompkins or whatever, which I think it's going to be Darden. I'm pretty much sure that's the guy who's going to win that 6th spot. So maybe you get snaps for them out there. But for the most part, these guys are going to be special teams. And with the signing of Jannard Avery with the play of a guy like Nolan Turner, with the play of a guy like Olakunle Fadukazi. I butchered his first name. Sorry.
Yeah, but you nailed the last name though.
I did. Don Gardner, Rashad Robinson. And still, I think 4 tight ends is a lock. They're not going to be able to sneak O'Keefe back on the practice squad. It's just not going to happen. So 4 tight ends is a lock. I touched briefly. Maybe they keep 3 running backs and get Gio back on the practice squad because he's the vested vet. Doesn't have to go through waivers. And he's already guaranteed $900,000, not $900 million, Josh, $900,000 for the year. So it'd be just like, hey, you're already making close to $1 million from us anyways. Come back on the practice squad. We'll elevate you if we have an injury or if we need you. Because you're going to elevate guys, I think, up to 4, maybe 6 times this year. I'm not positive. I know it's at least 4. It could be 6 though. So I mean, I don't know. I think this is going to be a huge game for a lot of these guys in order to prove special teams. And if they find value in keeping that 5th linebacker, which I think with the signing of Jannard Avery and with Bull's comments today, he pretty much said, we saw him, he was available. We'd rather have him in here now than have injuries happen and have to go look for this guy later.
Oh, yeah.
I think Avery was in line for reading from Steelers Depot and some of the beat writers. He was in line for the number 3 position, outside linebacker spot, and everyone thought he had that. So him getting cut was a big surprise. I don't think Avery would have a difficult time maybe finding a spot somewhere else if he is cut on final cut down. So do they keep that 5th outside linebacker now, which I didn't think they were going to. So now you kind of have to shut. Now, who are you taking away from what spot there? Are they keeping 9 offensive linemen with maybe a Brandon Walton included and a Fred Johnson, or maybe are they only keeping 8? So it's such a balancing act. Who do they think that they can get on the practice squad that they can have there and, call up in case of an injury happens and is going to be happy staying in the practice squad all year with a chance to win a ring and be part of something special? So, like, there's so many different – Nolan Turner goes out there and lights it up on special teams and as a safety. Do they want to keep him, especially with Keanu O'Neal kind of battling something right now and not 100% sure if he'll be ready to go? Now, most likely he will be able to ready to go. But, do you want to keep him? So there's so many different variables here on what they want to do. Do they keep 3 inside linebackers with just KJ Britt and try to get Fadukazi, who's had a lights out preseason and might get scooped up by somebody else, or Grant Stewart, who was 3rd in the league with special teams tackles last year? Does he get scooped up on waivers? So there's such a balancing act that can they afford that luxury of a 7th wide receiver to protect against injury when you're probably getting Brashad Perriman back in the practice squad, and you'll probably be able to get one of Kalen Geiger or Devin Tompkins back in the practice squad as well. Maybe both of them, and or Jared Stearns on there as well. So, like, it's such a juggling act. And where I was team 7 wide receiver all the way, because there's so much talent, and can you give up talent when you've had the histories? I don't know if that's the case right now. And I think some of these guys have stepped up to the point where they've showed the Bucs that, hey, maybe we can maybe we don't need 7 wide
Mm-hmm.
receivers. Maybe it's more beneficial to have another guy that can play at a different spot, provide that depth, and provide special teams that way. So I have no idea.
From a very surface level, I mean, hey, that was an awesome breakdown, JC. I think just based on how good those guys are, I think I would actually like the flexibility at another spot and have the 6 wide receivers personally, but I don't think there's like an egregious answer either way, to be honest, right? Like, it's not a terrible problem to have. Obviously, it's they're gonna have to make a decision one way or the other. I don't think the team's gonna get killed for whichever way they actually land. But I think just after hearing all that and thinking about it a little bit, knowing that they could use some depth pieces at some other places on the roster, and the fact that I like their receivers so much, I would lean with the 6, but who knows?
If they could only keep 57, it'd be perfect. Right?
Yeah, seriously, right? Yeah,
you could have your 7th wide receiver. You could have your 7. You could keep Mike Green around on the team. You could keep Grant Stewart and Fadokazi, and you could keep a 5th or 6th safety or 6th corner.
At that point, too, I think you even offer the witch doctor a roster spot, right? I mean, there's offering value there. So
absolutely.
I feel like JC, your wife is going to need a witch doctor to cure her from having to deal with you in your sleep. Like, I feel like you're sleep talking. You're probably like Fadokazi, Brandon Walton, Grant Stewart, like in your sleep. That's what I picture, dude. All these names just bounce around your head, man. Impressive.
Who's it gonna be? But I'll have my 53 out on Sunday. Scott will have 5 tomorrow with his 53. So look out for that. So that's going to be good. But I've done a 53 before. I've done midway, so I'm going to get mine out for the final 2 as well. Just keep it consistent. And I'll have that ready for Sunday, and I'll have a couple more articles ready to go the next 2 days as well. So.
And again, make sure you're following Josh on Twitter and you're checking out pewterreport.com for all the great written work from Josh and all of his colleagues. And might as well plug our own work as well. BucsGameDay.com, the only Sports Illustrated website dedicated specifically to covering the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I got work coming out every day. David Harrison, Caleb Skinner. We got lots of good writers there as well. So
Caleb Skinner, Mr. Sideline catch over there at training camp.
Yeah. Was it actually a nice grab, or I don't know if my guys
It was a bit of a bobble. Don't let him fool you like he one-handed Odell Beckham laid out for it.
I think he got both feet down, though, to be fair. So you know what I mean? Relative. Yeah, exactly.
It was out of bounds, but, by far. But
hey, that's fine. Yeah, so I guess he landed. Yeah.
But was he standing on something to prop, like a Gatorade
he was
cooler?
Sitting down, actually. He was sitting weird because we have to sit down and kneel down, and he saw it coming. Reflexes popped up, bobbled it for a second, but caught it, and he threw it back to one of the assistants or whatever, and he had his training camp moment. I was like, that should have been me. No.
I don't think he was sitting down. I don't think he was actually sitting down, JC. He's just a little lacking in the height department, dude. That's all. It just looked like he was sitting down. Shout out Caleb. I'm just playing. Okay, couple comments I want to bring up here. Here we got Quapo dropping his predictions. Team 7. I'm with you, Quapo. Let's bring 7 receivers, and it's perfect because Dog's best friend
right there. Oh, sorry. I mean, there's 3 inside linebackers.
True, that is interesting. Who would that third be then?
KJ.
Yeah, KJ Britt.
Yeah, he's been wearing the green dot. He's got the Mo and Mike experience. They trust him. I think it'd be KJ unless Josh thinks it's Fadokazi. I don't think it's Stewart. If it's Fadokazi, drop the name drop.
Yeah,
Josh, name drop him.
Don't leave us hanging here, Josh.
And John V on Twitter or on YouTube watching us wanted to name drop, but respectfully says he can't spell his name. He says, I think the backup linebacker whose name I can't spell is there in the spot. I refute. I assume he's talking about Fadokazi.
JJ Russell.
Sorry?
No.
It must have been
JJ Russell, right? He's talking about JJ Russell.
Yeah.
And then Dog's best friend, who's been wicked in the comments these last few weeks.
Yeah.
Pretty risky to put Devin Tompkins on the practice squad. I mean, I agree. So that's the reason why I think you go 7, because JC, you've mentioned about your intel about the team being very favorable in terms of Darden, and they want to be a little bit patient with him. And it seems like, at least through training camp, from everyone I'm talking to who's there, including yourself, that Darden has looked good as a receiver and at times looked improved as a kick returner, but maybe not as much as we'd like. It sounds like, though, the feeling is he is in favor enough. He's probably going to earn a spot. I know you think that, unless you want to correct me, but I recall you saying that.
No. Yeah.
So the thing is, I think Devin Tompkins has shown so much, maybe not in preseason, but he's only, he's played like a half the last 2 games, and we'll see how much run he gets in this final preseason game in Indy. But I feel like they believe they have something real there. And I think it's going to cost Scotty Miller his job. And I think it's going to cost them to, maybe not ideally, but resort to keeping 7 wide receivers simply to preserve the talent they believe is more exceptional in comparison to his position group than maybe some of these other names we're talking about. What's his name? The safety out of Clemson you were talking about. Turner, or like some of those guys, not him specifically. I'm just trying to throw out an example. So
right.
Just a thought as to how you could possibly justify them keeping 7 receivers. What you said also makes tons of sense. Though I can't wait to check out your predictions article, Scott's Fab Five or Fab Five, to kind of see what people are saying, because it's a guessing game, man. It's like a balancing act. It's like the NFL draft. Positional need, best available. Positional need, best available. Right.
Right, and you kind of get some intel as well as who they like. There's a reason why I haven't mentioned Stearns at all in that competition. I think Geiger's done some good things, but I don't think he's a realistic option to make the 53. I think you're really talking about those. If they do go 7, it's between Scotty and Tompkins. The problem is if they're rolling with Jalen Darden as a punt returner and potentially, Rachaad White as a kick returner. Where does Tompkins play on special teams, right?
I don't think how many
strong enough to be a gunner as a guy who's going to get down there and make the tackle. I don't. That's the question I have, and that's why we were on the podcast today for Pewter Report, and I was telling people, don't go take your piss breaks during special teams. Like everyone's like, oh, field goal. Well, I'm going to take who needs a beer? Oh, kickoff.
Yeah.
Oh, punt. Yeah. All right, I'll be right back. I'm going to get some Tostitos. Don't. If you're watching this and you're listening to me right now, watch who's out there, especially in the earlier game, because while that's not going to be 100% who's going to be the guy there, but if you see a guy like Fado Kazi out on that first team, if you see a guy like Devin Tompkins getting a start at punt returner, that means they're giving him a real look. If you see who's another bubble guy, Nolan Turner out on the first team, they're giving these guys a real look. And if then they show up on the stat sheet to go with it, it's going to be a difficult decision, So, who's going to be the gunners? Who's going to be those outside guys rushing down to tackle the kick returner or the punt returner? Who are those guys? Who's the punt blocker? Punt protector on that's that up back that's protecting the punter when the kicking team is out there for punt. Like those things are all important. Because normally you've got a mix of starters and you've got a mix of your core special teamers out there when you're out. So who's going to be out there as those bubble guys will give you an idea, and then how they perform will give you an idea of who might be those guys on the bubble, the 52, 53 spot who might make the team.
For sure, man. That's good stuff. And, if we have any new viewers, please do us a solid. Subscribe to the channel Bucs Banter on YouTube. You got to subscribe to Pewter Report on TV on YouTube as well. Scott Capron and myself, daily host, joined by Joshua Cole, JC Allen, pardon me, of Pewter Report. And we don't have too much time, but I do want to pack in a couple other topics if you can do it, JC.
Let's roll.
What do you envision Rachaad White's role being this season? You talked about how he's been working kick returns. Does he have potentially a handle on the RB2 spot? Keyshawn Vaughn looked pretty good last week, but it feels like everyone is in love with Rachaad White, not just as a receiver, but he's got that, like the Le'Veon Bell comps are honestly fair. Just if you're just talking, that doesn't mean you think he's going to be the best running back in football for a couple seasons. It means the way he runs with patience. And as I observed watching him specifically, he also has got that burst. He seems to, it's more of like a savvy way to run. Like it's like he's patient enough, but he can also turn it up a gear when he needs to. Is he impressing as much as it sounds like he is?
Yeah, absolutely. And with Gio hurt too, it's given him more opportunity. And that's not to take anything away from Keyshawn Vaughn, who's had a phenomenal camp. Was our Pewter Report MVP of the game last week. with his performance, and he's been catching the ball seamlessly, very few drops. He's been running the ball well, obviously, as we saw last week with a 54. It was like 10 carries, 54 yards, something like that. So he's been shown out as a runner and as a receiver. His pass pro has been getting better too, but right now, Josh Capo dropped in the chat, and he put a nice little Twitter thread on it. Go check it out if you haven't, about what Rachaad White's been able to do in pass pro. He's picked up pass pro well. If you look at what Coach Byron Leftwich was talking about yesterday in his press conference, just saying he's a man's man. You listen to Rachaad White in our training camp diaries and what he's had to say. He's picked up the offense very quickly. He's not out of place. He knows what he's doing. He knows the plays. He knows, the protections, the assignments, the routes. It's about kind of building that chemistry with Brady and Byron. I'll get exactly kind of what Byron said. He's like, he's a man's man for a young guy. He's a really thorough guy. He's really aware, really smart. He plays the game in a physical way. He takes notes like the quarterback. So he's a real smart kid that has an understanding and feel for football, which allows him to play the way he plays, which is fast, quick, and really kind of without thinking. And usually you don't see that. Usually that's something that you see coming in the second year, with guys, with JTS and with a Robert Hainsey and with KJ Britt and Jalen Darden as a receiver. These guys know the playbook. They know the area. They know everything. Like, they're not, they're just going out there and they're playing football because they know their assignment. They know where to be. They know what this look means. They're used to the NFL speed. White's caught up quick, real quick. And I think there's a possibility that he could be RB2 on the depth chart. Does that mean he's going to be RB2 in a game? I don't necessarily think so, because Fournette is a 3-down back. He's transformed himself in that. They're going to want to keep him fresh for sure for a playoff run. But as far as the running back room goes behind him, I still think there's not a designated number 2 guy. I think it will be more of a kind of a committee type deal. If Gio's on the roster, utilize him in situations where he's going to be utilized best. Utilize Keyshawn Vaughn in certain ways, and utilize Rachaad White. He's drawn comparisons by Albert Breer recently. So, came to camp and kind of picked the notes of the beat writers there and wrote an article and compared him to maybe James White-esque. Brady never really had a true 3-down back, before. And Corey Dillon was probably the closest, So James White was always that guy. You had LeGarrette Blount over there bruising bodies, and then you had James White as the runner. You had a receiver. So you had those types of situations where you have Leonard. I don't know if it's necessarily going to be designated number 2. Rachaad White's the guy, but I do think he'll get plenty of opportunities to make plays.
It'll be very interesting to see how their running back depth is utilized, and I'm especially curious to see how Todd Bowles will handle that compared to Bruce Arians. Bruce Arians was old school as hell with the running backs, and if they missed one block, they were on the shelf. Rojo just couldn't get a look if he fucked up one play. Very curious to see how the new head coach will handle that, right? And in terms of like talking about the rave reviews from the coaching staff about Rachaad White, like, I don't believe that's just coach speak, because if anything, I find they like to break down the rookies more than anything, especially at the running back position. They tend to say they're behind. Oh, he's got to figure this out. He's got to figure that out. Bowles is a no-nonsense dude. He's not buttering anyone up to the media. He feels zero obligation to do so. That's part of that Bruce Arians can't train of thought as well. So that is, to me, genuinely very positive in regards to that. So that's great intel there. Yeah. Dog's best friend with a savage comment. Kamara without the felonies. I mean, we had Thor Nystrom on the show after the draft to do a draft recap, and he's a huge fan of Rachaad White as a receiver. And so you've made the James White comparison, who is obviously an incredible receiving specialist for a running back, really. I don't
know if I say James White comparison. I'm just saying that's like, with who Brady has had as receiving weapons out of the backfield. He's the best receiving weapon that he's had it since in Tampa Bay, pretty much. And I think, even though Leonard Fournette had, 60-something catches and was third in the team in receptions, I think Rachaad White is potentially a better receiver than him at this point.
Sorry. Thank you for correcting me. There we go. So, Anyway, that's exciting.
He's got that Le'Veon Bell patience, and James White was not a running back. James White was strictly a receiving back, and that's it.
That's true.
I just meant as a trusted pass catcher, which is yeah. So, okay. Last thing I want to mention is, and it's I kind of got to mention it because there's so many names. The top 100 list. The players voted on it, so you can't get all bent out of shape, right? Like, what are you supposed to do? But it is interesting. Some of the names that weren't on there, I have to just at least bring it up from a Bucs perspective. Unless I missed one, I think Vita Vea, Levante David, Carlton Davis, and Chris Godwin all fell outside of the top 100 according to the players. Who is the most surprising omission by the players in voting, the ones who vote on that? And I know half the players have talked about, oh man, I used to vote for my buddy. One dude for the Eagles was dating my sister. So
Andrew Whitworth kind of blew that out of the water too, recently in one of his posts as well. And then I liked it, retweeted it, and I think I quote retweeted it, and Andrew Whitworth followed me. So thanks for the follow, Andrew Whitworth.
That's big.
But
like him.
I think Vita Vea, to be honest with you, and that's Levante David had a down season to his standards. He missed a bunch of time as well. So I wasn't too surprised about that one. Chris Godwin, for everything he did before he got hurt, if he kept being healthy, I think he would have made the list for sure. He was having an incredible season. Could have scored a few more touchdowns maybe, but I think he was just having an incredible season. He's becoming one of those guys that's really difficult to block. Carlton Davis, you gotta make more interceptions. You just have to make more interceptions.
Yeah, well said.
Gronk is another guy who I think, but because he missed such time, still ended up with over 850 yards receiving, and still was a force. I think he might have been a slight snub. I think I'd probably put him over anybody else besides Vita Vea, but Vita Vea was just named the third best defensive tackle by players, coaches, and scouts in the league, like top 5. So like he's just, the top duo potentially with him and Akeem Hicks at defensive tackle. So like I just think he's such an underrated guy. He's stacking up the stats. Obviously, he built that up a little bit more, but for what he does, the presence he brings, the attention he commands, I think. And I'm not talking like 60s, 70s, but like late 90s, I think there's a few guys. Maybe you take the fullback out, sorry, Juice, and you put Vita Vea in that spot or something like that. But I would think Vita Vea was probably the biggest snub in my opinion for the Bucs. And again, just because Devin White was probably too high. But I think if you look at what Levante did last season, still very impactful player, just not Levante David standards. And he'll be the first to tell you that. Not as many splash plays, and
he was hurt. He was
hurt, and he missed some time.
Levante's gonna just smash this year in every way.
With Hicks and Vea in front of him, they're gonna open up so much for everybody in this defense. You're talking about the middle linebackers having more freedom. You're talking about the outside linebackers being able to get one-on-ones and potentially matchups with tight ends and running backs, chipping them. And you're talking about the pressure they can bring in the middle and allow the pressure on the outside. Not to even mention the fact that, if you're sending Levante or White on a blitz, or you're sending a safety blitz or a corner blitz, the pressure that's going to get to the quarterbacks, that's going to limit their time to hold on to the ball and force them to get the ball quicker than they want to before routes fully develop. It's going to give the DBs all sorts of chances to come down with interceptions too. It's going to be a really fun defense to watch, and I'm very excited to get our first look at those two guys in the middle against some real competition. No, I mean, they're going to have their hands full too with Quentin Nelson, but it's going to be fun to watch those two guys operate and see how many guys they take up, because right now I think as an offensive line, I mean, two guys are, one-on-one, but you're going to have another guy come in here and double team or chip or do something. So you're talking about 3 blockers on 2 guys, and that's going to free up some stuff for the other guys on the field.
I'm going to take a page out of my co-host Scott Capron's book here, because he's not a Bucs fan, right? He always provides that objective lens, which I think is so valuable to have for a Bucs podcast. Scott, you've heard me say it a million times, but if we have any new listeners, maybe they're not aware. So it's important to bring that up. But what Scott will do on occasion is offer this from a step back from his little perch. And we're dropped, like you just we casually mentioned Akeem Hicks' name. You brought up Donovan Smith earlier. There's guys like Jamel Dean. There's like Carlton Davis. There's so many talented players on this team who we don't have time to even mention in a training camp update. We're already over an hour. It's truly unbelievable. And I think it should provide a little bit of comfort to those who are kind of on the, oh shit, our interior O-line's banged up, blah, 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 blah. Hainsey looks great. Gadecki looks great. For Christ's sake, we could throw Keefe in there at left guard if we have to, the way that dude blocks. He's making the team, by the way. I'm calling that. Keefe's making the team.
I agree.
Anyway, I just want to say, for Bucs fans who are tuning in, what a time. Don't you dare take it for granted. No matter what happens this year, the roster that Jason Light has assembled here, with the help of the greatest quarterback of all time, by the way, who's your freaking 45-year-old quarterback. I mean, what a time to be a Bucs fan. I'm just hyped as hell. We're gonna log off and talk for another hour about the same shit. So I just want to say thank you to everyone for joining us in the comments. Love getting the input from our listeners.
Some great comments in there today. Sorry.
Yeah.
Really good ones. That was awesome.
JC, I'm going to let you plug your work because you do so much of it, and you can say it better than I can. So why don't you take a moment to just tell everyone where they can find your stuff? I feel like most people watching already know, but do it.
Yeah, at JC Allen NFL right there. That's my Twitter. I'm mostly active on Twitter. I got an Instagram by the same handle. It's just mostly some pictures of training camp, OTAs, whatever, situations, games. Well, I'll just whatever. But mostly Twitter. I'm your one-stop shop for Bucs information. Like if it's coming from PFF, if it's coming from NFL, if it's coming from NFL Network, Pat McAfee's got something to say. If it's coming from pewterreport.com, it's out my own content, NFL content, Bucs content. If you're a Bucs fan and you're looking for everything you need that's coming out about the Bucs, including the most comprehensive coverage of Tampa Bay Buccaneers in the Tampa Bay area, my page is going to have anything you're looking for. I'm doing some awesome Twitter spaces where I encourage you guys to be involved, come up as speakers. If you can't for whatever reason, drop your questions, comments, concerns in the little comment box as well, and I'll get to those. Pewter Report TV, we're doing some crazy things. We're gonna kick off the season with a brand new series, Pewter Tailgate, which will go about 2 hours before game time. We'll switch over to that last half hour before game time with Pewter Game Day. They'll Pewter pregame and Josh Quapo, however you want to say the guy's last name. Spell it with if you're gonna spell it with a Q, come on, spell it with a C, whatever. Him and Matty Matera will be on that, leading right up into Pewter Game Day, which will be our live in-game feed with Paul Atwall, who will be coming back and breaking down the X's and O's with Matty Matera. And then, as always, we'll have our post-game podcast. So plenty of content on YouTube TV, podcasts 4 days a week, training camp, press conference tidbits and stuff like that. So we'll have all that stuff coming at you live there. And anything you guys need, Capo. So just spell it like that, Josh.
Yeah, just change your last name. That's totally
right.
Legally that's how that goes.
Change your last name to Capo. Makes it easier.
Josh, we really appreciate it. Okay.
Yeah. Right. Everything easier. But yeah, that's it. I mean, yeah.
Keep up the great work, JC. It's great to have you on. Make sure you subscribe to the Bucs Banter YouTube channel. And we keep having great guests from our friends over at Pewter Report. What I love about covering the Buccaneers in this media is it's very collaborative, and all of our reporters and people aren't afraid to work together and big up each other's work. One of my favorite parts about this Tampa Bay Buccaneers sports media landscape. So I've truly enjoyed to be a part of it. And I've enjoyed watching, right?
It's literally amazing. I mean, there's maybe one outlet out there who is kind of like dog eat dog, but the rest of us, we all, and unfortunately you're in Canada, so you can't be down here, but in the media room, we're all talking after practices. Obviously we're going to kind of keep what we want to write for content to ourselves. And, now that we can do some one-on-ones with interviews, we'll get some exclusive stuff. They'll get some exclusive stuff. For the most part, we're all discussing practice and discussing things. It's really a back and forth environment. And I've got friends who work all around the league, and, I tell them how our media room is, and they're like, really? That's crazy. Yeah. There's so much of, and Greg Auman too. Greg Auman was a guy who got me where I am today. He was one of the first guys I reached out to. He's been kind of like a mentor to me, before I joined Pewter Report, and now I had Scott, and then I had John, and now I have Scott, and those guys over there. So, but just to echo your thoughts, shout out to Tampa Bay media. We're killing it over here. Teamwork makes the dream work,
Yeah,
and we're it's really such a great atmosphere to be in.
For sure. And you'll see me there. I'll be at training camp next summer. Busy summer, getting hitched, had the bachelor party, busted out the tees. That's actually my face. My best man. Scotty has one. Scott has one of these
I
tees.
almost put it on. I just couldn't find it. That's so funny. I was gonna wear it. That's boom.
That's great.
On the Bucs logo. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
so good.
27 of those t-shirts went out to some of Toronto GTA's most finest, Toronto area's most finest. Anyway, sub the channel, check out Bucs Game Day, check out pewterreport.com. Thanks again to everyone who tuned in, whether you're watching live or listening to the stream later on any of your preferred podcast streaming services. Appreciate you. Go Bucs. Let's go.